I'm here at my shop taking care of a couple other things, and while I was here, I was going to actually change the oil on my 2010 Land Rover LR4. So this has the V8, and I already removed the top cover off the engine. But I kind of wanted to walk through the oil change procedure on this, just because it's kind of quirky, it's kind of unique, and it's super easy. Like, at no point do you have to get under the vehicle. And dealers charge like $280, I think was the last I heard someone on the forum say they got quoted. $280 for this oil change, and it literally takes about 10 minutes. Like I said, at no point do you have to crawl under the vehicle. There are some, like there is a special tool you need, but I'll show that in a minute. But it's pays for itself in one oil change. So typical oil change, right? If you've ever done an oil change before, pretty standard stuff. You typically crawl under your car, put a container under the oil pan, find a drain plug, unscrew it, and then the oil drains out of the oil pan into your container. Then you typically have to transfer that oil to some other container that you then bring to like a recycling place or a auto parts shop that reclaims oil, that sort of thing, waste oil. The other aspect is there's a filter. Typically, it looks like this, right? So it's a metal canister type filter that you screw on. It's threaded at one end, and you screw it on. Typically, these are mounted under the car somewhere, which means they have oil in them. So when you unscrew it from the car, then you carefully have to kind of remove it, keeping it vertical so nothing pours out or spills. Then it's a pretty simple step of screwing on your new oil filter, refilling the engine from the top. There's usually a hole, right? There's like an oil fill cap in a valve cover or somewhere else, which you remove, fill your oil, and then you check the oil level with your dipstick, and you're done to make sure it's adequate. Almost none of that applies on this vehicle. So first and foremost, there is no drain plug under this vehicle. At no point do you have to get under this truck to change the oil. The way the oil is drained out of this is when you remove that plug, the cap, so the refill cap. See that little metal tube there? That little metal tube is essentially runs all the way down to the bottom of the oil pan. So just think of it as a metal straw to the bottom of the oil pan. So you have to use a special tool to suck the oil out of the bottom of the pan from up top. That tool I'll walk through is like a fluid extractor. Mine. I got at Harbor Freight. These like list for like $180. That's without any of the specials or the coupons or anything like that. This is a pneumatic one, so I have to hook up my air compressor to it, and that pressurizes it to then draw the vacuum. There are much cheaper versions that are manual, so you don't need an air compressor. You basically pump it by hand, and it draws all the fluid out. What's nice about this is the oil gets drawn out and stored into this container itself, and then you unscrew the cap there and can pour it into whatever you're going to use to bring it to a recycling facility. All right. Other quirk number 2 on this is the oil filter. So first thing, it's top mounted. So the oil filter is not under the car. That in itself is not super unique. There are cars that have top mounted filters. My Mark 6 GTI had a top mounted filter. I love top mounted filters because when the vehicle's off, the oil drains out. So you're just removing an empty filter. You don't have to worry about the mess or keeping it vertical, or even, do I have to pre-fill my oil filter with some oil, right? Mechanics all argue, I'll add, fill it halfway, reinstall it. With a top-mounted filter, not an issue. You have an empty filter right from the beginning. What you'll notice is this is kind of unusual looking, right? It doesn't look like this. That is because this is considered a cartridge style filter. So essentially, the outer casing is reusable. So the proper filter for this truck is this. And this paper element is essentially what's inside of, your conventional canister style filter. So the outside portion is reusable. So you can unscrew this, it exposes this, you pop this in, and then you reuse the same casing. So it's a little more, I guess, environmentally friendly, right? Or economical, because you're not worrying about the reusable steel kind of shell. The other thing is, in high performance applications, race car teams, that sort of thing, they cut these open after every oil change so they can inspect the element and look for like metal shavings and that sort of thing. So that's kind of like an added benefit. This, you could just, use an oil filter wrench, that sort of thing, to remove it. I purchased, I think, this guy off of Amazon to kind of just make it easier, right? Now I could put a ratchet on here and just spin that guy off. So the filter is kind of like a unique situation on this. The last piece is the dipstick, right? Normally you have a dipstick to draw out, check your oil level. This vehicle, which is actually becoming more common on newer cars, it doesn't have a dipstick. The oil level is checked inside the vehicle using the infotainment system. It's a digital screen that it's a digital graphic representation of the oil level in this truck, which I'll walk through. So the only thing that's conventional is the fill, right? So that's where our new fresh oil is going to go, and right inside the valve cover, which is normal, or has been the same for a very long time. So I'm just going to quickly walk through the process. Like I said, it's just kind of neat, and it boggles my mind that dealers, because I guess it's a premium brand or premium luxury brand, think they could charge nearly $300 for an oil change that takes 10 minutes, and you literally don't need to get under the vehicle, you don't need to lift the vehicle. It is all done right here. So to change the filter, we go with my little oil filter wrench that's specific to here. Get my ratchet. Okay. Grab a rag. So there is the paper element. But as you can see, it's all nice and drained down. There's the element. And you just remove it. And the new one has the little O-rings ready to go on it. Here's the cap that came off. There's this little rubber O-ring seal that goes around it. And when you buy a filter, in the box comes the new one. So just stretch that over it, get it in the proper groove, and the cap is ready to go. Here's the new filter. Just snake it into the cover, and it goes. And we do not, oil filters, people have a tendency to over tighten them. There is no need to, once it gets seated, just a little bit of an extra half turn. So it's seated, tight, not even half, like once it's tight, it's tight. And that's really it. Oil filter done. No leaks, no mess, no crawling under the car, no worrying about draining it, no worry about refilling it. The oil filter part of this change is complete. So the only specialized tool really is a oil extractor or fluid extractor. This is the regular standard Harbor Freight job. Harbor Freight does have cheaper versions that are manual. This one, you hook the compressor up to it, to this nipple here, and then it pressurizes it and you're good to go. It supposedly holds 6 1/4 gallons. I've never filled it that much, so as it fills up, this is the gauge that kind of indicates your oil level. So I'll do a couple oil changes, get it up to here or so, and then bring the oil to a recycling facility. This is just the cap to access what's inside, right, to empty it. It comes with a bunch of tips that I guess, you know, there's flexible ones, there's of two different sizes, like a bigger tube, smaller tube. There are hardline ones, same thing, two different sizes. So you know, stick them in to get to the bottom of an oil pan. For this vehicle, because it has that little pickup like straw looking thing, what I did was I just basically took a piece of rubber tubing, added it to this one, and this slides onto that fitting in the truck, and that's what I use. The other component of this is the actual like pickup hose. So it comes with like a little protective cap with the O-rings there and the valve. So what you're supposed to do, I guess, is hook the compressor up, let this pressurize, you know, let the gauge get up close to yellow there, and then hook it up to either the tip, put it in the fluid, and open the valve. So now it's just a matter of getting the air connected. And you can see it's pressurizing. So it's pressurized. So what I'm going to do is take this. See, when I open it, it loses air. But I'm going to connect the hose to my filler. So I've just connected them. It's a pressure fitting, right? It's just, and I'm opening the valve, and you can see the oil get drawn out. So you can see my setup. The rubber hose is connected to the little pickup tube. The clear hose is now nice and black, drawing oil out through the tip. The tip is connected to the actual real nozzle, and this was just like a compression fitting. You just slide it on. The valve is open. It is drawing oil. You can actually see the oil starting to accumulate there at the bottom of the tank, and we wait. Basically wait until you'll see this tube will go clear. So here it is now. It's been running for, I don't know, about a minute, and the tube went from like the thick dark, you can see now it's, you know, struggling to get some oil up. You can see it kind of flowing through there. All right, pressure is dropping on the actual evacuator. It's still doing a good job pulling. And you can see how much oil we've drawn in so far. So I like to just let it go, even though it looks like it's barely drawing anything up. I'll just let it go for a little bit like this, just to get as much of the waste oil out as possible. When I'm satisfied with the amount of oil that's been removed, I just cut the valve on here, pull the air off of there, and put it away. And like I said, I usually leave the waste oil in it until I do a couple more oil changes, and then I remove the oil using the like gold colored, bronze colored cap there, and put it into whatever containers I'm going to use when I bring it to our recycling facility. If you have the type of facility that lets you pour the oil in, you could bring the whole unit. It's not very heavy. It has little wheels on it. It's easy to move. And you know, you could just dump it straight in from there. So we're done. So I'm going to close the valve here. And I am going to take my compressor off. And we're done. So even now that it's off and the compressor's disconnected, it's holding pressure. So what I will do is disconnect the tip, which I just slid off, right? And I'm gonna actually open the valve a little bit, just to get rid of that pressure. There, valve's opened. Tank is depressurized. I'm gonna put the tip away and put this back in the corner of the shop until the next oil change, and that's really it. So now comes the conventional part, which is putting oil back into the engine. I believe the spec on this is 8.5 quarts. So here's a 5-quart bottle. keeping an eye on the funnel below to make sure it's not backing up, but it has plenty of room for like the air to escape, so it's basically the oil is going right through the funnel as fast as I could pour it in. That's 5 quarts. I'm gonna put in like another 3 and then check the oil level. So I'm going to do a check from here. As I mentioned earlier, there is no conventional dipstick like in the engine bay to check the oil level. So we put in 8 quarts. It calls for 8.5. I just want to do a check of how much oil is in there. So the oil level is checked using this LCD screen on the instrument cluster. So the first step is to turn on basically the accessories. So we're going to hit the start button without applying the brake, because if you apply the brake and hit this, the vehicle actually starts. So no brake pedal applied, and the accessories come on. So what we do now is, on the steering wheel is this little button with the OK in the center and these arrows. This is what I'm going to use to navigate the menu items there. So if you hit OK, it'll actually clear all these warnings. So we're at our base LCD. I'm going to click OK, and these menu items come up, and you'll see at the bottom service menu. Service menu only applies, it only shows up in this mode. If the vehicle was actually running, that would not show. So I'm going to hit OK again, and then I'm going to use the arrows to go down to service menu, and then I hit the right arrow. Okay, and I actually want to go down to oil level display and click OK. So right now it's telling me that the oil level is below the minimum. Okay, sometimes if the vehicle is hot, like say you were just driving around and then go check the oil level, it'll say unavailable. The oil has to be checked cold, I guess, or below a certain temperature. So I'm going to click OK again and go add that extra half quart and see what happens. So I added a little bit of oil. So we'll go back to the menu, service menu, oil level display, and we are good. It just says OK, we're done. Okay, and we can power this off. Again, I just kind of wanted to walk you through what I thought was an unusual oil change, and a very simple oil change. As you noticed, I never got under the vehicle. Everything was done from the top of the engine compartment, and you know, this was a fairly expensive service and could easily be done by yourself with, you know, just a couple tools, specifically that oil extractor. And if you want to go crazy, that special the oil filter wrench that I bought. But you know, it pays itself off in the first oil change. So if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. I have a bunch of videos about pertaining to different project cars that I have, but also kind of like tutorial videos like this will also be included. Thank you very much.